Good morning, Digit fam. Adam Dowd here, ready to kick off another week of all the tech news that you need to know. And fun fact, last Friday, Sam and I shared the airwaves for the first time on the Android Authority podcast, which was pretty awesome. So if you're wondering what the two of us would sound like together, check out the latest episode over there, link in the show notes. But for now, it is July 22nd, 2019, and this is your Digit Daily. At the end of the week, we got a new processor, sort of, from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 855 Plus, which we discussed at length on this podcast and on the Android Authority podcast, link in the show notes. Long story short, it's a factory overclocked Snapdragon 855. Well, now we have all the details about the first phone that will be using the new processor, and folks, this thing is an absolute unit with a capital holy crap. We are talking about the ROG Phone 2, and yes, I know technically it's supposed to be ROG Phone, but guess what? If you don't have periods or dashes in there, you get ROG, and that's what you get for your laziness. It's not my fault, those are just facts. Android Authority's David Amell was on hand with the ROG Phone 2, and fun fact about David, nothing gets him cagey quite like tiptoeing around embargoes at 6 o'clock in the morning. You held strong, David, and we appreciate it. But let's run down the impressive spec list for this piece, shall we? You're getting the new Snapdragon 855 Marketing Plus chip, you've got a display with a 120Hz refresh rate, and that display has a 240Hz touch sensitivity, which means basically the screen will record touches 240 times per second. Add to that 12GB of RAM and 512GB of UFS 3.0 My God storage. On the back, you've got a 48-megapixel main camera and a 16-megapixel ultra-wide-angle shooter. You've got a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. This phone is such a screamer, Asus is including a fan cooling accessory in the box. That should give you an idea of what kind of insanity we're talking about here. Another neat add-on are the air triggers that act as shoulder buttons for landscape gaming. There's also a headphone jack. You can check out David's hands-on video for even more details, but for now, there are some other things to unpack here. First of all, this is a beast of a phone, and I have to give a hat tip to a commenter on that video here. It has all the things that consumers say they want in a phone. A bigger battery, front-facing speakers, a headphone jack. As great as it is to see this on a gaming phone, I'd really like to see all these things on a normal phone too. Get with it, OEMs. Second, we have no word on pricing for this phone. The first generation went for around $900, and that would honestly probably be too cheap for this phone. I'm guessing it's $1,000 at least. Add to that the accessories that you can get for this phone. The Kunai gamepad, which turns the phone into a pseudo Switch Lite with controllers on either side. You can also add a twin view dock, which turns the phone into a sort of 3DS with a second screen, an additional 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and why is Nintendo getting all the credit here? Anyway, we've seen a lot of gaming phones over the past year. You can't see it, but I'm making air quotes. And all those are high-spec cheap phones that really don't offer much in the way of gaming, again, air quotes. Then there's the ROG Phone, which you can tell is 1000% laser focused on gaming, but it comes with a hefty price tag. I have to wonder if the rest of the field will undercut the phone, even though the ROG Phone is really the only gaming phone out there. It's a point to ponder, and ponder we shall, but first, it's time for the roundup! We're going to keep things going on the gaming cart here because over the weekend a class action lawsuit was filed against Nintendo. The reason? Joy-Con controllers. Remember when we talked about the Switch Lite and how built-in Joy-Cons were a cause of concern for me? Well, it turns out vindication was only about a week away because glitchy Joy-Cons are at the core of this lawsuit. It turns out that Joy-Cons will drift when they're not being touched. Oh my goodness, what a revelation! And I'm just glad to know that the lawyers behind this suit listen to the Digit Daily. Welcome! Tinder just took a chunk of bucks out of Google's wallet. Now on the Android app, instead of using Google Play to conduct any transaction, Tinder instead has users enter their credit card number directly into the app, and what could possibly go wrong with that? Doing so cuts out Google's cut of the transaction, which could be anywhere from 10 to 30%. But this adds Tinder to Netflix, Spotify, and others who have cut out App Store purchasing from their apps, which could become a bigger trend in the not-too-distant future. I'm just wondering how long it'll be before Google forces developers to use its service, or GTFO. 5G promises to bring all the awesomes to your phone in the coming years, but it also has one minor side effect. Law enforcement can't use it to track you. What's that now? It turns out that the tools that law enforcement uses to track and monitor smartphones doesn't work on 5G, and that's just so terrible for you. Now, officers in the EU specifically are whining that they didn't get a seat at the table when developing 5G technology. Well, no you didn't, because you're police and they're tech companies. We don't get to tell you how to arrest people, do we? Well, okay then. Not to mention, trust me, the tools are there, or if they're not there, they'll be there soon. You'll be fine. San Diego's Comic-Con, aka The Comic-Con, happened over the weekend, and it came with it a slew of geekery for all you listeners. The Verge has a great roundup of most of what we saw, but there are a few highlights I wanted to spend a little bit more time on for reasons that should be fairly obvious. Marvel unveiled its Phase 4 plan, a series of 11 movies and TV shows that will be coming out over the next 3 years, including a Black Widow movie, Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, The Eternals, and more. Plus, Natalie Portman is taking up the mantle of Thor in the 4th movie subtitled Love and Thunder, and seriously, Marvel, what is going on with your movie naming? But Jane Foster will be your new Thor for a time, and yes, it happened in the comics too, so just chill out, misogynist fanboys. This is going to be an interesting 3 years, folks, so strap in. The MCU is just getting started. And finally, we also saw a trailer for Patrick Stewart's new series, Star Trek Picard, which features Brent Spiner as Data, Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9, and Jonathan Del Arco as Hugh. Hugh, you may remember, was the Borg drone that the Enterprise crew freed from the Collective and gave an individual personality. Then all hell broke loose in the Borg Collective until the Borg ejected the contaminated drones, and they all lived under the reign of Lore, Data's brother. Anyway, space soap operas aside, his presence in the story is very interesting indeed, and it makes me look forward to the series even more. So that is going to do it for today's Digit Daily. If you'd like to learn more about any of these stories, check out the links in the show notes and subscribe to our daily newsletter on Digit.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, leave a review, and don't forget to tell your friends about DigitDailyPod.com. Once again, I'm Adam Dowd, Dead Technology on Twitter, and we'll talk again tomorrow.